Sicily was a lot of fun, maybe the most exotic region of our mission just because it was the most far south. And so weather was great. It didn't get too cold in the winter time. I remember I was there in November, December with an Italian missionary from the northern area of Italy, and he just couldn't believe how warm it was in November and December. And he would say, "Oh, I cannot believe how warm this is. I've never seen weather like this in my whole life." And so he really liked that. So they have great weather and lots of decent public transportation. I never drove a car a mile in my whole mission. Did a lot of walking and every other kind of public transportation you could think of: taxi, bus, train, subway, boats in between the mainland and Sicily. And so, yeah, I did 6 months in Catania, Italy, which is just on the eastern region, eastern sea coast of Sicily. And so it's fun being down there and traveling to the other regions to see other missionaries and conferences and things like that. Because all the major cities are along the ocean due to like porting and stuff and shipping. That's where all the major cities were established. And so beautiful views, beautiful beaches. And we did get to go to the beaches in the wintertime when no one was there. And so although we didn't swim, it was still fun to be there, and that was a lot of fun for the missionaries. But Sicily's terrific, probably the most traditional and areas where the Apostle Paul had come through, and so lots of history there, lots of European history. And so they have a very traditional, rigid work schedule in Sicily, and rigid in the sense that they won't change it, not necessarily rigid in hard, effective work produced. But their work day, I think it starts at about 8 and it goes until about 1 in the afternoon. And then they take a sacred and consistent break from about 1 to 4 when the business is shut down. And just like the business is shut down at the mall at 9, they bring down those big metal gates. They do that for all the businesses, the optometrists and the shops and the lunch places, and they shut down from about 1 to 4. And they'll go home and they'll get undressed and they'll get in their pajamas and they'll go to bed, literally go to bed. And then they'll get up and get work again from about 4:30 or 5 until about 9 or 10. And they have dinner late. They'll have a late dinner at about 10:30. And so at night, when we're getting ready to go to bed, you can hear pots and pans and smell steaks and pork chops and pasta in our neighbors' apartments. And so that was interesting. But yeah, it's just as inconsiderate to go knock on somebody's door at 2:30 in the afternoon as it would be to knock on their door at 2:30 a.m. Because I remember one time we did it. I was with a companion and I said, "Let's go do some finding right now on our lunch." I forget what we were doing. And he said, "I don't recommend that." And I said, "Yeah, let's just try it. Let's just see what's going on. I've always heard that, but let's just try it." And so he says, "Okay." And so we went to this gentleman's door. We knocked on his door and he says, "Who is it?" And we announce ourselves and he comes to the door and he just shouted at us about how inconsiderate it was to knock on his door at this time. And he was in his pajamas and he says, "It's 2:30 in the afternoon." And he just screamed at us. And he says, "Do you know what time it is? Do you know how rude this is?" And he says, "Leave, I'm trying to sleep." And so he says, "I told you." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And so I didn't try that again, but it was hard for me to believe that people could, I don't know, feel that way about sleeping during that time of day. But every now and then we'd catch a little nap with them, even though we were supposed to study and prepare during that time. But yeah, they like their afternoon nap and they believe that it's necessary. And so yeah, that's definitely a part of Italian culture. But as far as businesses go, I don't remember any like major industries or big businesses down there in Sicily, but a lot of family businesses, family restaurants, family shops, things like that. There's an Italian church, a major church, Catholic church, in every region or every city, and in one area, we got close with the don of that church. His name was Don Antonio, and we had been cleaning his church for a while. That's how we became friends with him. And over time, he came to really enjoy the missionaries. And so it was fun walking around with him around the city because he knew everybody. And it felt like being with a celebrity. It felt like being with being with like a high-powered politician, because he would kind of talk down to everybody in the city that he would see. And it's like it was like he was everybody's grandpa or everybody's uncle. And so we'd walk down the street and he'd go into a bar. In Italy, a bar is just like a coffee shop. So we'd go in there and he'd order a coffee and he'd buy us a croissant or a juice. And some two or three guys would come in and he would talk down to him in a silly type of way, as if he were their uncle or their dad, and say, "Why haven't you called me? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that?" And they'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Don Antonio." And they kind of avoid him and say, "No, you're not. You're not sorry. You've been saying that since you were a little kid. You're just like your father." And he'd say, "I wish you were more like these American guys. These are good guys right here." And I always felt so proud to be with him, just that he liked us. And so yeah, we got to go up into his church, which is more like a castle, and he lived in the top floor, and just felt honored to be up there and to be in his presence and in his good graces more than anything, just to be accepted by him. And that was neat, because I remember up there eating lunch with him with his pride. He had jewelry and paintings, and it was mad. It was interesting being up there, because I remember thinking that this is something that a tourist could never experience. Probably for any amount of money, you couldn't come up here and eat lunch with Don Antonio and have his maid prepare this wonderful Italian lunch for you. Her name was Angela. She's a really nice lady. And so I remember just feeling blessed and happy to be up there and experience that unique piece of Italian culture. And so I enjoyed that. But every region has just like a major church, and then there's a priest who's presides over that area. And it's fun just seeing how everybody's connected, because they all are born, and a lot of them just stay in the same area. Yeah, one interesting thing that I did notice about Sicily is just how a lot of times the people are very narrow-minded and simple, and that they don't really think beyond their what they know. And so in that sense, I did meet people from small towns in Sicily that had never literally been outside their city, which was you know, about a city as small as any university town, as Norman, Oklahoma, or Provo, Utah, or any major, not bigger than that, not a huge industrial hub, but just a regular city, and they've never been outside that area ever. And I remember meeting them and just being fascinated that they had never been to Rome, they had never been to France, they had never even been outside of Sicily nor out of their city. And so I remember asking them, "So you never been to Rome, you never been to Milan?" And they'd look at me and they'd say, "Why do I want to go up there? I have everything I need here. I got my food, I got my grocery store, I got my brother that lives over here, and I got the guy down the street that fixes my shoes." And they'd say, "So why do I need to leave? What am I gonna get?" And I just remember being fascinated that these people have lived and died their whole lives in these small areas, and their family owns this apartment or something like that. And so I don't think that's something that you see in other regions. It's just that tendency to just be so simple that you're not interested in anything the world has to offer. Just live and die in your own little city, but they take great pride in where they're from, and they definitely represent their culture and their region. And so that was interesting.